Off the backboard with one Jonathan Macri, JC Macri NBA on Twitter of Knicks Film School. We got a lot to talk about in the NBA landscape as we head down to the final stretch. Jonathan, it's been a couple weeks since we talked. We had to move over, let the college kids take over for a bit, but it's time for the big boys to come back. Hope everything's been good through really up and down couple of weeks here for the Knicks.
Yeah, it has been an interesting couple of weeks for the Knicks. It's been an interesting couple of weeks for the league at large. I mean, teams moving up, teams moving down, and yet you look at the two conferences and like things are just as jumbled as they were when we last spoke. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens down the stretch here. Last 2 weeks, I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, a lot happening on the court, like you mentioned, and off the court. The whole John Morant situation. Now, apparently, Bradley Beal is also being investigated because he knocked a fan's hat off because he lost him 13,000. Just a word to everyone that's in the sports gambling community. We're all in this community. Don't be that guy. That's
Don't be like
that's
that.
all I got to say. Don't be that guy. Look, last time out we had a couple of rough bets go our way. I think Jokic missed out on that double double by like 2 rebounds. Nuggets ended up losing that game. Look, I bet against the Spurs, and the Spurs won. So I guess I'll take it, but I don't know. We're ready to ready to flip a new page because we got a lot to get to. I remember we were talking about it that day, and you were like, I don't know why the Raptors are favored. And here we are. We both got red on our names. So
Listen, we're gonna bounce back. That's okay. It's positivity, positive energy here.
Absolutely. Let's get to last night's results because we had a kind of an interesting slate. Some games don't really mean much. Other games do. The Kings doing everything possible to hold off for as long as possible before clinching a playoff spot. They can do it again tonight as they get closer. Obviously, they will clinch a spot. I want to start with Sixers and Nuggets. No Embiid last night. Sixers end up covering. Started at +7, went up to +10.5. Just your thought on that game, just these games in general with Kevin Durant coming back too. And then I want to ask you the question that's been over asked for the last couple of weeks, but I'll start with your thoughts first.
Yeah, I mean, the Nuggets, it's funny you bring up the Toronto game that we talked about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whenever we last spoke, because that was kind of right at the beginning of Denver's kind of little mini slide that they've been on. And I think a lot of us expected, okay, this is going to be a short lived thing. It's a little skid. They're going to bounce out of it. And I think the fact that this game came down to a review at the very end, that if the review went the other way, this could have been a different result in favor of the Sixers. No Embiid, no Harden. So the Nuggets still scuffling. Meanwhile, the Sixers, one of the best teams in the league, record-wise, net rating-wise, since the All-Star break, they're playing good ball. The only other thing that stands out here for me, the start of maybe some not-so-subtle tanking from the Utah Jazz. They are gearing up to get into position after what has largely been a feel-good season. But I think you're starting to see a couple of guys, key guys that have been good players for them all year long, sit out some games here and there. They're a team I would keep an eye on down the stretch.
Yeah, not so subtle tanking, or has really been the theme for the last
Yeah.
couple of weeks. Because look, like Pacers, we all know what you're doing. We all see what you're doing. Like you're not slick. Wizards, we all know what you're doing outside of the Bradley Beal stuff. Like, we know what you're doing. You're putting
Yep.
out embarrassing lineups. You are not slick. We see right through you. Big result too with the Mavs too, who had really been struggling.
Yep.
Luka comes back. Him and Kyrie easily take care of the Pacers. I feel obligated to ask you. Jokic is now the favorite again. I think he was at +105. And Embiid was at like +115, 125 on DraftKings this morning. This thing just keeps on flipping back and forth over the last 2 weeks. You have to vote right now. Who is your MVP?
This is maybe going to sound a little nuts. I might be going to option 3 and going with
Oh,
Giannis. Not just because he was my preseason pick, and I would always like my preseason picks to come true, but I think the fact that Embiid, the Sixers are sliding a little bit, the fact that
mm,
Embiid missed this game, I wonder if that's going to factor into voters' minds. And I can't for the life of me imagine we're going to see a 3-time MVP that voters are going to vote for kind of out of not indifference, but like if there's going to be another 3-time MVP, it's going to be a guy that inspires passion amongst the voting body. I just don't get that sense with Jokic right now. I understand all of the statistical arguments are right there. I would go with Giannis.
That is interesting. You have a good point. The three-peat is hard enough as is. And
It
it
is.
felt like for, 50, 60% of the season, like Jokic was very much in that realm where it was like, okay, like he's doing crazy stuff. Like we can't not give him this. And then all of a sudden
Yep.
it's flipped. But interesting. Never thought about the that third option path. So if you're listening, go throw some money on. I guess I think it's Giannis like plus 450 or things like that.
Best
I'm not telling you to
player,
do that, but
best player on the best team historically. That guy does win the award a fair amount of the time.
I will say that would be hilarious for everything that's happened over the last 2 weeks for Giannis to come in and win MVP. Honestly, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. One result we did leave off our scoreboard from yesterday was the Knicks game, easily taking care of the Rockets. Not only did a good team win there, a great team won because they ended up covering as well. We're going to be talking about this more tomorrow because huge game coming against the Miami Heat tomorrow. Huge game, huge standing implications. We're going to be breaking down the entire East tomorrow as well as we get closer to playoff time. Just a couple quick thoughts on this game last night as IQ scored 40.
Yeah, career high for Emmanuel Quickly. No Jalen Brunson, so obviously opportunity for more shots for Emmanuel Quickly. I hope everybody got their Emmanuel Quickly over bets in. I think, this is a game that said to me a lot more about the Rockets than about the Knicks because this was a close game. Actually, really until like late third quarter, and then Houston just showing absolutely no desire whatsoever to play even a semblance of winning basketball, kicking the ball left and right on the court. And the Knicks ended up going up by 30 at one point. So again, talking about not so subtle tankers. If you could get your bets in against the Rockets down the stretch of the season, make sure you get those in.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of double-digit spreads between them, between the Pistons and the Pacers, and it's as much as the league has done to fight against tanking, not quite enough can be done. We're going to talk a little more standings tomorrow. I'm going to save. I have a juicy question for you in terms of who the Knicks would want to play. I am going to say that for tomorrow because we're going to break it down. But I'll use this as my segue into talking about the Western Conference. Looks like the Nuggets are going to win the conference. Like no real question about that, at least in the regular season. Just want to get your thoughts because the West is doing what the West usually does. It is all jumbled up. One game can change everything. The Pelicans, like you mentioned, had been surging after struggling through the injuries. Like anything here grab your attention, not even necessarily about winning the conference, just like come back in a week and this team is going to be a completely different spot.
Come back in a week and the team's going to be in a different spot. I think the bottom obviously is so jumbled up where like right now, and we'll probably get to this in the next segment, the Warriors are in 7th. They're not that far ahead of like 10th or even 11th place. And then you could actually flip that on its head with the Mavericks, difference being that Dallas Mavericks have a bit of a tough schedule coming up. The number that jumps out here for me is the Clippers at plus 800. Again, talk about preseason picks. They were my preseason finals pick. Not looking so great right now. But at plus 800, I mean, you could do worse for a team that definitely has the talent.
Yeah. For them, it's going to be, can they survive until Paul George comes back? I think today Shams said that it's potentially the second round when they should be expecting it, but they'll have to survive. Something you had mentioned, teams to make the play-in or just to make the playoffs in general. The Warriors are plus 850 to not make the playoffs in general. For them to make the play-in, last I checked on DraftKings, they're at plus 200. One of those teams that's really interesting. You talked about the Jazz probably throwing in the towel. Yep. The Wolves plus 120 to, again, participate in the play. And they don't have to make the playoffs. That's a different betting category. But to participate in the play. And then even a team like the Suns, plus 1,100 to participate in the play-in. KD's coming back tomorrow. Don't think that's happening. Just taking a look at those two markets. Anything jump out to you?
To participate in the play-in, I feel like the safest bet on the board right now, I know they lost the first game that he came back against the Bulls in LA, but the Bulls have been playing very well. I feel like the safest bet to participate in the play-in is the Lakers. That's probably because it just feels like they're not going to be good enough to escape out of it, but they're also going to figure out a way to make sure that they're in it. The one that I really like as far as bets to miss the playoffs entirely are the Golden State Warriors. I think
not the direction I thought you were going in.
So it's plus 850. That is a team, as I talked about the Houston Rockets kicking the ball all over the floor. Like watching the Warriors come down the stretch against the Timberwolves the other night, there is just something about that team that is off. And we keep waiting and waiting and waiting. Well, here we are. It's game, whatever it is, 74, 75. When is it going to happen? And I think people keep expecting this switch to flip. No Andrew Wiggins, it's a personal situation. We don't know if he's even coming back. Are we really ruling out the possibility that the Warriors could fall into the play-in and then get defeated in 2 play-in games? It just happened a few years ago. We saw it. Now, granted, this Warriors team's a little bit better, but still, it's not like there was a precedent for this.
Yeah, I think it was Jason Maples on Twitter. Great Twitter follow. If you're not there yet, who said, I think we're officially at the point where it's gone from, okay, the Warriors just need to get in and then they'll figure it out, to, okay, the Warriors might not make it in anyway. According to Tankathon, 18th hardest schedule to remaining. So right there, middle of the pack, but it's not a shoo-in like it used to be, for sure.
No, far from it.
Yeah. Okay, so again, like we mentioned, we're going to break down the whole East tomorrow. We're going to be talking some Knicks. Again, big matchup tomorrow night, Knicks and Heat. As always, obviously, you can get your coverage on Knicks Film School as well. Let's go through the numbers for tonight's games. Right before we went on air, Jimmy Butler announced that he is not going to be playing. So these numbers have shifted a little bit. It was Toronto minus 3.5 against Miami with a good amount of backing. Obviously, since he's announced out, this has flipped up to minus 5.5. Just real quick, your reaction on that, if 5.5 is too big of a number.
I mean, Jimmy Butler is a guy who is probably going to wind up making All-NBA second team because he is that important for the Miami Heat, despite the fact that he's going to wind up missing, close to 20 games. To me, that speaks to how vital he is to Miami and everything they do. Miami as a road dog this year, 7-9. So that doesn't exactly inspire much confidence. I feel like it's the right number. They're bad on the road in general. They don't have a good just win-loss record on the road. I would have liked to grab it at 3.5, but I think I'm still probably with the public on this one, grabbing it at 5.5.
Yeah, again, Jimmy Butler is probably worth those 2 points, but for it to be at 5.5 is another story. Again, things in disarray in Washington. Big backing for Boston at minus 11 against the Wizards. Interesting one here where the Pelicans, again, you mentioned it, have been really good recently. Like this is a team that is probably top 4 in the West. If Zion is playing 75% of these games, they're getting a lot of backing. We'll go through all of these, but wanted to ask you, this is the most interesting one here. Atlanta and Cleveland, again, big implications, all of these games for seedings. The public is going with Atlanta. So is the big money. This was a pick'em about 2 hours ago. It has now flipped up to minus 1.5. Jared Allen's questionable. Isaac Okoro is also questionable. I mean, I guess that's enough to flip it up to 1.5, but I would take Cleveland here probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this beforehand. I mean, Cleveland is, if there is such a thing as a kind of like a warm blanket for this NBA season, it is the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are in every game. I went through it actually last week. I think they have the least amount of times in the league that they are in the of any team in the league of losing a game by more than 15 points. They're in every game. They play a lot of close games. Meanwhile, you got a team like the Hawks, which, again, I think I've said this before on here, and I'll say it again. I don't know how you trust this Atlanta team, even looking back over their last half a dozen or 7 games. They haven't. It's win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. Now they're due for a win because they lost their last one by 4 against the Grizzlies. So there is that. I have a tough time trusting this Atlanta team for as much as they're home. It's a game that they need. 1.5 is close enough. It's a stay away for me, but if anything, I'd go with you and go with the Cavs.
We get the hard-hitting analysis here on Off the Backboard. They lost last game. They're due to win.
They're due to win. That's
it. You're right, though. This is a stay away. This is the kind of game that you target player props in. And with that, maybe my smoothest transition on the show. Low bar. Let's take a look at the most popular bets for Draftkings for tonight's games. Decided to switch it up a little bit. Usually review what we had for last night. This night we're going with what we got going for tonight. Top of the board there is Marcus Smart, over 5.5 assists at plus 115. Obviously, you can scratch off now Jimmy Butler, over 34.5 points, rebounds, assists. These are some numbers I've been on too. Any of these really grab your attention? Because it looks like everyone's just zeroing in on 2-3 games tonight.
I mean, the Donovan Mitchell number, and for that matter, your favorite. I mean, I think you've taken him 3 or 4 times that we've been on together, Darius Garland. I mean, the Hawks defense hasn't been very good all year. Since the All-Star break, they're giving up almost 120 points per 100 possessions. That is the 5th worst defense in the league, again, since the All-Star break, with the only teams worse than them, the Kings, and 3 teams that are trying very hard to lose games. So Atlanta doesn't stop anybody. You never know. Mitchell could have an off game. I mean, certainly Garland could have an off game. But of these, I think just for the value, I probably like the Mitchell prop a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, that's just for in terms of trend sakes, he's only hit this 4 of his last 10, 2 of his last 5, but he has been right at that number around 30-ish. In terms of consistency, again, Butler's out tonight. He had hit that in 8 of his last 10. Jaylen Brown has hit this, and look, he's been balling. It's been known, even if he's a little unhappy in Boston. Our producer Nigel might be throwing things around the room right now. But Jaylen Brown has hit this in 7 of his last 8 games. I think the worry tonight is probably just that it's a blowout, but like the Pistons have been anemic defending the ball, scoring the ball, doing anything good with the basketball. 35.5 is a bit of a big number, but I guess not for Jaylen Brown tonight.
Yeah, no, I don't think the recent off-court stuff, he doesn't strike me as the sort of guy that's going to let that impact him one way or the other. So if you believe in Jaylen Brown, again, I think the backdoor, what's the opposite of a backdoor cover? You're on pace to get it, but it's a blowout, so that's the only thing I think you have to worry about.
Yeah, a sweat-free night that you can cash in the third, fourth quarter. Something like that. All right, let's wrap things up with our best bets for the show. Before we get to that, though, do want to remind you we're giving away $500. You don't have to do basically anything to enter. All you have to do is subscribe to our channel on YouTube, comment on any video. It can be this one. It could be the Morning Edge this morning where they talked about some NIT picks and previewed basically half of the MLB season and their futures bets. Comment your best bet for tonight, your favorite bet for the whole season, or just say hi. I don't care what you comment. Just comment anything, and you're automatically entered. Again, your chance to win $500. We're also going to be running a play action pool for both the Masters and one that's launching a little later this week for the Final Four. All you have to do is answer some questions correctly. It's free to enter, and you have a chance to win up to $1,000 in prizes. Again, free to enter. No reason not to do it. The link to join is going to be in our description once it goes live. Make sure you're staying tuned to our Twitter, to our Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you follow us, hopefully on all those platforms, so you can hop in as soon as it launches. Okay, without further ado, my spiel's out of the way. Jonathan, get us started. What is your best bet for tonight?
Jordan Poole, under 18.5 points. This is minus 118 on FanDuel. Again, I like to have kind of themes when I do these shows. Today's theme is fade the Warriors. Look, Jordan Poole could go off occasionally. He has gone over this number in 2 straight games. However, if you look back since the All-Star break, he's only had 3 games in a row over 19 points once, and only 2 such occurrences, I think, over the last 10 weeks. So him being consistent for more than a couple games in a row is just not something that happens very often. And also, you brought him up before, the New Orleans Pelicans. people may not have realized this because you're focusing on they're falling in the standings and no Zion and the whole thing. Guess who has the best defense in the NBA since the All-Star break? It's the New Orleans Pelicans. And when you face a Warriors team that is not always very careful with the ball, Jordan Poole's a big culprit there. I like Jordan Poole under 18.5 points tonight.
Yeah, and a fun surprise for you as well. You might have taken this at minus 118. This is actually at minus 108 now. So even better.
Okay, great.
Little extra, couple extra cents for your bank account. Again, when Steph went out and just in general, just hearing Jordan Poole under points just doesn't sound like it makes sense. Like that's someone you expect to light up. But again, it's just kind of been that kind of season for the Warriors. I'm going to round it out with someone that we talked about a little earlier on the show. It's been one of my favorites to bet on all season long, and that is Darius Garland. I am taking over for his points today. It is at 21.5. Best number you can get that at, minus 110 on DraftKings. I expect this to be a high-scoring game tonight. Look, the Hawks, like you mentioned, have just been awful defending the ball. Darius Garland has been very good at scoring against the Hawks. He scored 26 and 33, I believe, in the two matchups they've had this season. And look, Darius Garland has struggled so far. Like in the last week or so, I think he's gone over 20 once. He's missed this in like 5 of his last 6 games. So it's not super encouraging, but I think that's where you get this better price. You look at kind of how the Hawks match up. They have a very bad defensive guard in Trae Young, a very good defensive guard in DeJounte Murray. So DeJounte Murray will probably be spending more time on Donovan Mitchell, in which case Darius Garland is your way to go. You can go a couple of different options here. Again, the public really likes his over 1.5 threes, but that was at like minus 180. He's been shooting like 25% from beyond the arc recently. Again, this is with the caveat that he has been struggling. If you want to take the option of his points and assists, I believe it was at 28.5. Best number was on FanDuel last I checked. Some people see this as a little safer. I'm usually of that camp. But I would rather not risk it as much because this could be like 26 points from Darius Garland and like 1 assist type thing. Just come up a little bit short. Again, if he might be struggling to score, I'd rather just eliminate as many factors as possible. So I'm just going to go with this point tonight, over 21.5 points for Darius Garland. Hopefully these two guards take us to the promised land in opposite directions here.
I like the points. The Hawks will let you walk into as many mid-rangers as you want. Darius Garland feels comfortable taking those. So I think this is a good number. Yeah.
All right, Jonathan, we got a full slate tonight to get to. We will be back tomorrow for another episode of Off the Backboard. Again, Knicks Film School will have all your coverage tomorrow as well. And then also don't miss our episode on Thursday. B-Matt will be back. We'll be going through his NBA props, another episode of Off the Backboard. Jonathan, as always, a pleasure, and I'll talk to you in about 24 hours.
Pleasure's all mine, and here's to some happy betting tonight.